Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This video is all about growing cucumbers. How can you keep getting cucumbers throughout the entire season? May, June, July, August, September, in some places even October. Cucumbers grow quickly, especially in the heat of summer. This is actually my second planting of cucumbers. I have really 2 rounds in. We're going to go over to the first 2 plants, the grouping of plants that I planted back in May. They're kind of beat up. I'm going to show you how to care for plants that are doing really well. These are beautifully green, getting watered a whole lot. Show you how to care for plants that are a little bit beat up, and then talk about succession planting of your cucumber plants. This is going to be a long video, so use the timestamps to jump to the parts that you want. We're going to do some bottom pruning, we'll do some other kind of pruning, a little bit of insect dust, peppermint oil spray. I'm just going to cover really how can you maintain your cucumber plants throughout the summer, and that's going to include direct seeding, so you keep getting cucumbers, you know, until really the frost rolls in. So this is a group of plants that is doing really well. We'll come back to this. Let's go over to the plants that I put in back in May. They were direct seeded. Actually, one grouping was direct seeded, the other grouping was a transplant. Just want to cut in real quick to show you what I'm going to be taking out of 3 plants. These 15 cucumbers, beautiful size, nice and green, not overgrown, they're not yellowing, came out of this area. 3 cucumber plants. This is my second wave of cucumbers that I put in probably around, I don't know, the first week of June. But beautiful production. Keep planting the cucumbers and you'll continually get a harvest that looks like this. The cucumbers on the right and on the left of the trellis were first put in back in May, and they look okay. This guy's getting really beat up. The leaves are getting yellow, some markings on the leaves. I don't really see any diseases. I'm lucky enough that I don't get too often fungus that come to my cucumber plants. We'll be talking a little bit about that. But the leaves are beat up. They're looking yellow. The green looking leaves that are in there right now, those are grapes, so don't get confused. But this plant is really past its prime. I am going to show you how to take care of it with respect to maybe giving it one more, you know, round of care to see if it's going to continue to produce. But I've been getting beautiful cucumbers out of there like this. When a plant is beat up, first thing I'm going to do is come and look around, grab any cucumbers that are maturing. Here's a smaller one. I'm going to take that out of there. I'm going to hit this with a water-soluble fertilizer, pretty straightforward, and just keep up with the watering. But the leaves are really looking yellow. The temperatures here have been 95 plus, really, for probably the last 3 weeks. Not a whole lot of rain. Don't really see any spider mite damage. It's possible that it's just the heat beating this up. I am watering pretty regularly. I'll show you the watering too towards the end. But I'm going to just hit this real quick with actually some magnesium sulfate. Now, that's Epsom salt. Epsom salt is a fertilizer, but it's not a fertilizer that has nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Those are the 3 main elements that your plants need. So when you put on magnesium sulfate, you're just adding magnesium and sulfur. Those are the second level nutrients that the cucumber needs. They don't need a lot of that. But by giving it to them, you know that it may help green them up. But this is really probably more related to a nitrogen issue. The main elements, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But a one shot with a quick watering of magnesium sulfate isn't going to hurt your plant. People get confused and think your plants need the Epsom salt, you know, every 2 weeks, once a month. They don't. Just give it to them mid-season. These cucumbers here went in May, so May, June, today's July 10th. It's a great time for feeding. But realistically, the plants here just aren't going to make it. But we'll take care of them as if you're trying to, you know, give them their last hurrah. In here, I have my pickling cucumbers, and I've been getting so many out of here. This one is past its prime. Let's see what else we have real quick. Here's one up here. This plant still looks pretty good. The leaves, let the camera adjust, are a nice green color. They aren't, here's the dang lanternflies. And it's been so hot, I haven't really been coming out here except for watering. And there are some cucumbers that are way past their prime. I like to remove the cucumbers, even if they're a little bit smaller. Let's make sure I found all of them. There's one more. Now this one, if I was assessing the plant, wow, here's another one. These are all going to be used for cucumber salad. Look at all the lanternflies. So I'm going to be putting down some insect dust because the lanternflies do get killed off pretty easily. Have lots of smaller cucumbers up there. So maybe from this angle you can see that this grouping is a little bit more green. Here is another. Look at this cucumber. Alright, so we're going to harvest off all the cukes. You want to get a cucumber before it starts turning yellow. That means it's probably going to get a little bit tart. You know, the pickling are best picked this size. Market Moore's best at that size. Just a side note. The grouping over here looks pretty good. So giving them the water-soluble, the magnesium sulfate if you want to, that's not a must, really will help these out and they will continue to produce. The plants over here beat up. So let me bottom prune. Just take a look at how it looks down there now. How it looks down there now. Get a bottom prune, just open up the airflow, and then we'll continue with taking care of these plants. This is the most beat up cucumber plant in my garden right now. It was actually the first one to go in. And really, in my opinion, except for the sake of the video, I would really just pull this out. I would put new seeds down there. We'll be doing some direct seeding in this video too. But remove the leaves from the bottom, get some airflow going in there. This is the amount of leaves that I took off. And this plant is just really, really beat up. No specific signs of any, you know, real disease or insect pressure. I haven't even seen cucumber beetles yet. But remove the bottom leaves, hit it with a water-soluble. Maybe it does okay. I don't think it's going to do that well. Over on this side, I took off a bunch of leaves, and I'm just getting, you know, a pair of scissors, and I just get in, find the leaf that I want to remove. For example, here's one, and I just get pretty close to the main vine that it's growing off of and give it a clip. This plant looks great. This plant is worth trying to save. So I got in, removed about, I don't know, 8-12 inches worth of leaves right down there. Going to get into the other side, remove those leaves. When you have the vines sprawling all over, if you have the space, you can let them go. I definitely want to pick them up like I did with the ones right here, and I'm just stuffing them into the cattle panel. I'll let them kind of work out, you know, where they want to go. The leaves will all turn towards the sun after they get a feeding and a watering, and then I might come back and thin them a little bit. I'm not real big for removing vines that are growing. A lot of people do. If the plant is healthy, I just like to keep it going. But for instance, you could remove some of the vines that are kind of branching off. They're not suckers or anything like that. You know, you have the main vines coming out of the ground, and then they branch off, new vines come, and a healthy plant is just going to cover, you know, the space that you're growing in. So remove the leaves. Let me finish this plant up with lifting up the vines, finish pruning, and then we'll get to the next step. A good 10-12 inches of leaves have been removed from the bottom. That's going to let airflow in, makes it a little easier for me to get in and figure out where to water. Sometimes the plants can get so dense you forget that the way the vines are coming up. So there's 2 plants in here coming up right from there. These were actually direct seeded. There's a squash bug. Let me get that. Make sure I grab them. So I had squash over here on the right. Found some eggs on cucumber leaves because my squash plant died off. Squash bugs will come over to your cucumber plants if they don't have a place to go. Squash bug removed. By removing the leaves, just like in that example, I was able to see some of the pests that are crawling around down there, so you definitely want to do that. So the leaves are removed, and then I look around. I'm going to let all these leaves correct and turn, and leaves that are buried in the middle that aren't really getting sun, I'll remove later. I'll show you examples of that when we go over to the other cucumber plants. Here's a vine coming out. I don't really need that, so I'm just going to go up to where it joins the other vine, right up in there, give it a clip. Well, we'll give it 2, maybe 3, and just remove it. I just don't need that. It's going to sprawl on the ground. I've already lifted up a lot of the vines. If you see yellowing cucumbers, probably a pollination issue. That one just wasn't pollinated. No point in keeping that on there. Need some sharper scissors. Coming around here, there's a vine dropping off here. I'm not going to cut that. I'm just going to tuck it right up in here. Here's a good example. Those are squash bugs and squash bug nymphs that just hatched. Let me tuck my scissors under my arm, and I'm just going to smash all these. So squash bugs will migrate over to your cucumber plants. Looking around, here's a vine down here that's really just going nowhere, and I'm just going to remove it. I don't know where it goes. There it goes. It goes all the way up into here, and I'm just going to break it off and just remove that. And that's just the minor maintenance that I do with vines that I don't want. If I have them going in a direction I want, I go ahead and, you know, just tuck them upward. If they're growing somewhere I don't want them, then I go ahead and I remove them. That's a lot of production really from one plant. Again, I don't think this one's going to make it. I would probably remove it. Please follow me. I'll show you how these plants do over the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to continue with planting squash, cucumbers, other warm crops like beans, really through July and August. I have a video on how to manage squash plants. I will put that into the video description. And you just want to look around. Like once you open the bottom, there's another squash bug right there. And I just want to smash that. Just opening up the space let you get in there. There's no flowers around there, so I would put insect dust right around the stems so those pests that crawl around on there will get to the dust. Over here I have flowers that I'm going to want to remove just so the dust isn't getting on a place where bees are going to go. But clear out the leaves, remove the flowers. There's another pest. Oh, that's the lanternfly. I'm really just looking for squash bugs. They're the most destructive. I know the lanternflies are a pain, but they'll be easily removed. Clear out the space, get your dust down. All right, let's get to the feeding. I like to water first. That will just keep some of the Epsom salt and water-soluble from getting washed away. It's not that big of a deal, but you know, if you're doing both, you might as well put the water down. I want to show you how much water I put down there. Again, the Epsom salt I'm only using once a year, if that. I use it when the plants maybe look a little bit yellow, beat up, and after they've just been producing for a while. So the green plants that we're going to go to, the cucumber plants that look really healthy, they're not going to get Epsom salt because they don't need it. The leaves look great, but they're going to get the water-soluble fertilizer. For watering, with this 97-degree heat, crazy hot weather, they really have to be watered every day. There's tons of surface roots all over the place here. We want to wet those down, but first I'd like to start with, I'm going to show you just how long it takes. 10-15 seconds of just watering the base. I know that from an experiment where I filled up a 5-gallon bucket, with about 15 seconds I get about 2 inches of water in a 1 square foot space. So right in there, let me actually turn it to the side for a second. It's a little bit hot because it's been sitting in the sun. You want to water in the base, give it a good 2 inches, 3 inches, just a great soaking. And you could do this every day in the heat, but you know, 3 times a week when it's hot like this. The deep soaking really gets to the roots that are obviously deeper in the ground. That helps them live longer. As I water the bottom, this is in the squash video, there is a squash bug. We got to get rid of that. When you water the bottom of your squash and zucchini, by the way, and cucumbers, any squash bugs tend to climb up the vine. They don't like being soaked like that. But that's 3 squash bugs that I removed. You just want to give it the deep soaking because that water goes down far enough that when the sun is beating down on the soil, that top 2, 4, 6 inches can dry out really in a day, especially when the sun's like 100 degrees. So we give it a good 15 seconds and we've really soaked in this area. Now for the rest of the area, we're going to soak it in and just kind of imagine the water traveling a good 2 inches down all over, like way back in there. The root systems of these plants, the shallow roots, go all over the place, and one mistake people make is, 1, they don't water enough, and 2, they just water right there. You want to soak down the whole area. And this is pretty good for a day's worth of watering. If you have mulch, certainly put mulch down. That will make a big difference. Once everything's watered down, in 1 gallon of water, 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt. Epsom salt should just be plain. It's magnesium sulfate. Let me just drop that in there. It's magnesium sulfate. You can see right there, magnesium sulfate. Good to give the plants magnesium sulfur. You don't want any perfumes or additives to it. Just plain old Epsom salt. In here, I have a water-soluble fertilizer. Any one works. I recommend AgroThrive. You can find them in my video description. It's a great organic fertilizer. First place that I want to water, or water with the water-soluble, is right at the base. I'm going to give it a big soaking. When your cucumber plants are this size, they are really taking the fertilizer out of the ground, the N, P, and K, the nutrients. So using water-soluble once a month when the plants are big might not be enough. Maybe you have to do it every 2 weeks. It depends on how your soil's been prepared. I know that there's a lot of compost in here, but these plants need nitrogen to stay green, to keep producing. You can see all the growth that is everywhere on this plant. I even have it growing as part of my trellis up my apple tree. It's really producing nicely. So we hit the base, and then we want to hit out away from the base. Let me come over here on this side. And I just want to get like right in there with the water-soluble. I'm ensuring I'm hitting all the roots, the nutrients is everywhere. And that probably all in all was about a gallon or so, you know, worth of water-soluble fertilizer. This plant is good for another 2 weeks at least. I think this plant is going to be okay. It's going to continue to produce. Sometimes you might find vines dropping down like this. Just want to show you. Here's a cucumber growing on there, and it goes all the way up to the joint. Rather than remove this guy with the cucumber, you can just come down a little bit further. You know, if I had my scissors, it'd be great. And just same thing. There's a cucumber right up here. I'm gonna leave that. I'm just gonna end the grow tip on those vines. I just don't need those cucumbers growing down over here. These are the pepper plants from my other video that I've been showing you how to save them, and they're greening up really, really nicely. Again, if you follow me when I do the Ramblings tour, I'll give you updates on all the plants that you see in my videos. Space is open. You know, you can technically just prune off the tip. You don't want to smash it like this. Just FYI, when you smash this, it sends out a scent. It smells like cucumbers. That can attract insects. So a nice clean cut is best. All right, so this guy is set up. Let's get to the other cucumber plants, do some quick pruning. They're going to get watered and fed just like you saw here, so I'm not going to do that for them. But I wanted to show you the basic pruning, and then we'll get to the peppermint oil spray and the insect dust. Second wave of cucumbers. There are actually 3 plants in here. These are supposed to be a bush variety. They look pretty big to me, but anyway, they're producing. Nice and green. First thing I'm always doing is I'm looking for any kinds of marks on the leaves, and there's some marks on there, but nothing I'm really worried about. But they are nice and green. They're not yellowing. There's no issues. I'm not worried about really nutrients. The soil's been set up nicely. These are growing in 100-gallon grow bags. I sell these at my seed shop. Now, the soil was set up nicely with compost and fertilizer. These do get water-soluble fertilizer. I know that they're doing pretty good. You don't have to go crazy with continued feeding if you're on a routine. So when the plants are this size, really about every 2 weeks for water-soluble, we could do a top dressing, but it's not really necessary. I'm going to skip that. When you come in here, we're going to remove the lower leaves, but look at the production. Again, 3 plants. There's a cucumber back there. There's 1 down there, 2, 3, 4. 1 back there, 5, 6, 7. First thing I'm going to do is get in there and remove all the cucumbers. This is the first big production out of these plants. With a heavy production, with a heavy harvest, that's when I do like to make sure I hit it with the water-soluble. If you're not on a routine and you're not sure when you last fed them, when you pick a bunch of cucumbers like I am good at now, hit them with the water-soluble fertilizer. It looks like I got 14, 15 beautiful cucumbers out of this space. I mean, that's perfect. It's 3 plants in there, second wave, and continue to plant. Like I will put this variety cucumber back in the ground, direct seed, August 1st, towards the end of July, just to keep the production going all the way into September, maybe beginning of October here. Absolutely beautiful. I mean, 15 cucumber plants. All right, I'm gonna take a break and then come back out. It is way too hot out here, and then we'll just bottom prune. I took a break for a couple of hours. It's 1 o'clock, full sun, even though the clouds are starting to roll in. Maybe we're gonna get a thunderstorm. And you can see how some of the leaves are just flopping. They're losing water pressure. That's perfectly normal. A lot of your plants will do that when you're getting these pounding hot days. Going to have to water in here, of course, but there's plenty of water in here. So that's just a response the plant does when it's really, really hot. I wanted to show you down at the bottom. I'm going to remove a lot of the leaves from the bottom and inside the canopy. And the canopy is formed by all the outer leaves. It kind of, you know, creates a shade dome. So the leaves that are really on the inside, they're not going to really be collecting solar energy, so you could remove those. They're just a good place for insects to sit, for disease to take hold, and you can see the plants naturally, some of the leaves on the inside are dying off anyway. So you can remove all of those. So let me take out the bottom leaves here, remove some of the leaves under the dome created by the outer leaves of the cucumber plant. So just to give you another example, for the pruning, you could just cut the leaf right there if you wanted to and remove it. I mean, it's not going to make that much of a difference. Or you can go back closer to the vine and just cut off the whole leaf. You can do either one, whatever works best for you. I also wanted to show you, so any of the vines that are dropping down to the ground, if I can pick some of them up, like the one right here, I'm just going to lift it, throw it over the cage. Some of the side vines, they're going to produce again, and you have to make some decisions, like this one is coming into here. It's low to the ground, it's covering up my peanut plants. I don't really need to lift any more up, so I am going to shorten this vine. Now, you can take it all the way back, but there's a cucumber growing again right there. So I'm just going to come down really to here. I don't know why these scissors aren't sharp, but I'm just going to cut it back. So I'm just kind of taking the top off the vine and stopping it from growing. I'm going to take a look at this one too that's growing down here, and I'm just going to cut it right there. So you don't have to remove an entire side shoot, which is going to be a vine that's going to produce. You can just kind of terminate it by cutting the tip off. It's not going to grow anymore. All right, let me continue cleaning up this space. Where you can move the vines around, like this one's coming straight down, I'm just going to drag it over here. Be careful because they can break. You don't have to be super careful. And I'm just going to throw it over here. Tuck it in there, or tuck it in there, and that's opening up some of the space to let all that air flow in. And I mean, it's looking better. So you can move the vines around. They're going to correct, especially after I water them. The leaves are going to perk up, they're going to face outward. And you know, I'm not going to go through here and prune everything, but I'm going to clear out this base right down at the bottom. And then when they kind of perk up, maybe this evening, I'll remove a few more of the leaves. Cleaned out a good 12 inches of the leaves from the bottom here. Southern sun's behind me, western sun's over there. This area gets plenty of sun. The 100-gallon container gets beat up by the sun. If we dig in here, we can see it's pretty dry. We got to go down a couple of inches before we even get to moisture. This dries out really quickly. So again, watering is really important. I'm going to do a watering portion in the video for the container. Containers, you just want to make sure you soak through and you get all of the material in there saturated. It's a little bit different than the earth, but we're going to be putting a lot of water in there. So we have 2 plants growing there, 1 plant going over there, 3 in this 100-gallon container. They do really well. Space is opened up, remove leaves from the canopy. We don't have to get everyone, but the watering is going to be really important. Let me come around the back side here, because I've really been maintaining the cucumbers well over here so the sun can get into here. The growth, these are actually cowpeas, beans that self-seeded, so they're kind of blending together, but they're okay. I'm going to keep pushing these cucumbers out this way. Again, these are supposed to be dwarf, so they're a little bit bigger than I thought. Coming around the back, I don't have a whole lot growing in here, so I'm letting the plant just send vines out this way. And what I can do, again, instead of going back and saying, hey, you know, I don't need this entire vine here, let me go all the way back and cut it, I can just terminate it. So I'm just going to cut it right there, and that will allow any cucumbers, there's one right back there, that are growing and pollinated allow that to form. And I'll just go through, look at different ones, like the vine coming out this way. Just going to terminate it just like that. And that will help control the size of the plant. Looking in there, here's a twisted cucumber. I'm going to pick that one. Well, where'd it go? You know, odd, but it's still going to taste fine. And I did see another one. So I really did get 15 cucumbers out of here. All right, let's get to watering. For the earth planted cucumbers, the ones that aren't in containers, I didn't do a top dressing. I know that my soil, the earth around there, is really amended with organic compost. There's lots of compost in there. I even put in some organic granular in the planting hole. At the end of this video, I'm going to put in the portion of the video where it shows you how to set up a planting hole. I do that for most of my transplants and direct seeds, and you can watch that if you want, but it just shows you how I prep where the seeds went in, right over there and right over there. I do that for larger containers like this. I do that for the earth beds. If you wanted to do a top dressing, any organic granular fertilizer, just scattered around. That was one big handful. You could put down 2 big handfuls. That's going to be available over time as microbiology breaks it down. If you have compost, an inch of compost would be great. There's lots of surface roots here, so everything you put on the top, as it rains, as you water, will wash into that section. But I like using the water-soluble. And just to be clear, when you're growing in containers, your squash, your zucchini, your tomatoes, your peppers suck the life out of the container. So when plants are this large, you know, maybe in my earth beds, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, I'm giving it some water-soluble fertilizer. In some cases, maybe just once a month. But when you get to containers, you want to be watering with the water-soluble maybe once a week when your plants are really big, because there's no other place for the nutrients to come from. The roots can't go really deep into the ground. So once a week, every 2 weeks. When the plants are smaller, it's every 3 or 4 weeks. But when they're really getting to this size, you have to make sure you keep up with the nutrients. So let's get to the watering portion. I'd like to put the compost down, the organic granular down before I water. And watering's pretty straightforward. I'm going to soak down all the organic granular. Moisture is what will let the microbes survive and start breaking it down. This is not enough water, just FYI. It looks like a lot of water. I'm still giving a good 10 seconds right at the base of the plant, letting it pool, letting it soak in. You can't really overwater any container plant that has drainage holes. If it's a fabric pot like this, again, I sell these at my seed shop, the water's just going to drain out. A really nice soaking right at the base. And then we'll do the other plant. And I'm doing this in real time because some of the questions that I get where people are most confused are really around watering. It's always how often, how much, when do I do it? And when in doubt, water more often than you think. And you can see that that is a good amount of water going into there. I also like watering right in between the plants, out to the edges, and we're really just making sure we soak down this whole container. You know, where in the earth beds I was doing 10-15 seconds right at the base, I'm really giving it that much everywhere. I want all the material in this container to be soaked. And we'll hit the pepper or the peanut plants real quick while we're doing this. Watering is so important. The plants look like, you know, they're flopping a little bit. They look like they need a lot of water. That's a natural response. All the yellow leaves that you see in there, like I didn't get all of them. Very often when plants get larger, they take the nutrients out of the leaves at the bottom, they die off, and they send the leaves up top or towards the end of the growing vines so that the plant can keep growing, produce flowers, produce fruit. Even after I let this soak in like we just did, I'll come back and I'll give it a little bit more water. If you're going to spend the time and you're going to come out and water, don't underwater, do it the right way, really put a lot of moisture in there. So, okay, so now that this is set, we're going to hit it with the water-soluble fertilizer. I'm not going to use the Epsom salt again because the leaves are nice and green. They really don't need the magnesium or the sulfur in any higher concentration. The water-soluble, the Agro-Thrive will have magnesium and sulfur in there already, and the plants will get what they need. Feeding your plants with the water-soluble is not that much different than what I just did, you know, out in the earth beds. You want to soak the base, make sure you're getting nutrients in there. In this 100-gallon, I'm actually going to put 2 gallons worth of the water-soluble in there. And I'm using AgroThrive. Just follow the instructions. And I'm making sure I feed the peanuts down here, getting nutrients over here, and just getting the water-soluble everywhere in here. So in 100 gallons, I'm using 2 gallons worth of the water-soluble, you know, like in a 20-gallon container, which would be probably the minimum size that I recommend for cucumbers. I would put in half a gallon, you know, maybe 3/4 of a gallon of the water-soluble. You just really want to make sure you get the nutrients in here, and the water-soluble is really your best friend. All right, so we'll get to the peppermint oil spray, the dust, and then some direct seeding for the next round of cucumbers. Any basic sprayer works. I just use the Home Depot brand. They work pretty well. They're not that expensive. Divided, it's going to be hard to see, but we have half a gallon, 1 gallon, 1.5 gallons, 2 gallons. I just did a gallon. So in a gallon of water, I put in 2 teaspoons of the peppermint oil. I sell peppermint oil, rosemary oil, neem oil at my seed and garden shop. 2 ounces of peppermint oil goes a long way. It'll probably last you for 2 seasons. 2 teaspoons in a gallon of water. Then I put in a tablespoon of the Castile type soaps. It's the simple, cleanest, purest soaps. I use a tablespoon, sometimes a little bit more. You have to add soap so that when you shake this, the soap disperses the oil through the water. And about every minute, you want to shake this again. If you don't add soap, the oil stays on the top and you're basically just spraying water onto your cucumber plants. And then when you get down to the end, you put a concentration of oil, you damage the leaves. If you're going to use the detergent type soaps, the stronger soaps, I recommend starting with 1 teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons, and just don't overdo it. The harsher the soap is, the greater chance there is for more damage on your plants. You really just want to get on the underside, nice fine mist, and soak the undersides. This is great for managing spider mites, smaller pests. It helps mask the scent, like when I was cutting the cucumber plant. It puts out pheromones from the plant, and then after you get the underside, you just want to soak down the upper parts of the leaves. With peppermint oil, you can do this once a week. It smells really good, but you're really just wanting to get the undersides. I use this again primarily for masking scents, spider mites. I use it for spider mites on my bean plants. It works really, really well. If there was a fungus or something on here, after the peppermint oil dries, you could put down an antifungal. You could wait a day or something like that. Again, I like using the peppermint oil to manage spider mites. That's the biggest problem I get on my cucumber plants, and to really mask the scent for them beetles. They tend to kind of hone in on smells, I think. Different bugs focus on the color of the flowers. Other bugs focus on scent. But peppermint oil will go on to all the cucumber plants. After this dries, that's when I put down the insect dust. I've been told the peppermint oil with the soap does kill the lanternfly, and there's one right up in there. I'm just going to hit all the lanternflies that I see with some of the, there's one way up there, jumped over there. With the peppermint oil and soap, hopefully that keeps them under control. It's more of an organic type spray. When it comes to the dust, again, we've opened up the bottom. I'm going to remove some of the flowers from the bottom. Don't want good insects getting there. And I'm using spinosad. This is organic spinosad. In this version, it's Captain Jack's dead bug dust, but the main ingredient is spinosad. And that was a little heavy, but that's just going to get put down right on the stem. Any beetles will crawl through that. On the outer leaves, I do a couple leaves, maybe 2 feet up, a couple leaves, another 2 feet up, and then a couple on top. And I just gently put it on there like that. And that's all you really need for the cucumber beetles. Let me go over to some plants, set this up on there, and I'll show you what it looks like. This is another area where I'm growing cucumbers. Haven't gotten in there yet and really taken the leaves out, but for the example, the dust I sort of just scatter around at different levels. So I have 2 right there, next level up there. At night, the beetles really come out and crawl all over the place. So I've got this side taken care of, come over to here, you know, some right in there, some back here, and then some on these outer leaves. And then I would put some on the other side. You don't need a lot of dust. I just wanted to show you all. There's some right up there too. how I do it. The beetles will really crawl through this. It's really effective, and this way you're not spreading the dust all over the place. Organic dust, chemical type, people-made dust kill good and bad insects. This is the way that I like to do it to manage the cucumber beetles. This is the basic planting hole I use in my garden. You're going to see this in different videos because the basic setup is the same. I'd like to dig the hole about 10 inches deep, 12 inches deep at the most. That's 25 to 30 centimeters deep. You know, 10 inches wide, 25 centimeters wide, something close to that. Doesn't have to be perfect. The whole idea is that you're just digging out a hole, you're prepping the soil. Once you dig it out to the depth, you definitely want to get in, loosen up the bottom. Helps the root system just grow deeper, depending on what you're growing. And then you're going to add your basic ingredients. I like the planting hole because if this was a brand new bed, I don't have to amend and spend money taking care of this entire bed. I can just, you know, set it up, put in a planting hole 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe for 4 tomatoes, or like over there I have cucumbers, 1, 2 for cucumbers. It lets me just focus the resources where they're needed for this year. Nature will take care of the rest of the bed. It's a way to save some money. Filling the hole. Now, if you have tons of compost, you can just go with compost. You're going to fill that at least halfway with the compost. This is my compost. This is made from leaves. It's absolutely beautiful. And generally speaking, I would just put most of that in there, mix it through, put in my plant. But we're going to be in different points in our gardens with what resources we have available. You can use peat moss. The whole idea is that you're giving nutrients to this hole, and you're also creating a place where moisture is going to stay. That's really important, like I was saying, for the root systems. Now, you could replace peat moss with coco coir. They both impact the environment, and you just have to decide which one you want to use. If you have endless compost, certainly just use compost. But I would fill the hole about halfway with the peat moss or halfway with the compost. If you're using both, you know, a quarter of each or something like that. That is a great addition to really set this hole up. Now, you can go ahead, put in any organic granular fertilizer. This bag is a 27-pound bag that I got on sale years ago for under, let's just say under $5, which is ridiculous. You want to put in 1 or 2 tablespoons of any organic granular fertilizer. That's a slow release, and then you just want to mix everything through. You're not going to plant directly into that. Slowly add in some soil and just blend it together really well. And then you can kind of backfill in the rest of the soil. You have your basic planting hole set up, and then for the tomato plant or whatever you're growing, I would just come over, dig it out, set it to the depth I went. And remember, the tomato plants are doing, you know, a quarter depth of the entire stem or a third of the depth. You drop in your plant, backfill around there, and then you go ahead and you water it in. You can also do this with seeds. So since this video is going to show up in other places, you could set up the hole just like I showed you, and then if you're putting in cucumber seeds or zucchini seeds, you're going to thin to the strongest zucchini plant. You just drop it in like that. The root systems grow into a great, basically the great planting hole that's all set up for the plants. Root systems love it. They get really strong, and they really add to great growth of your transplants, or seeds in this case. At the end of this video, I'm going to attach my standard planting hole setup for planting seeds directly in the garden and for transplants. It just shows you how to prep the soil. No point in really going over that again. You may already know it. You can skip it. But in this space where I have 3 plants, these guys have been producing, we took out about 15 cucumbers. I'm going to just drop in, I don't have the seeds now, I'm going to do it later, but I'm just going to put in 3 seeds about a ½ an inch to an inch deep right there, and I would drop them in, cover them over. The 2 strongest plants will remain. I'll remove the weakest. You want to water this just about every day, especially in a high heat, or put some shade cloth over it or something. It can dry out really quickly. So if the seeds germinate and then you know, maybe go 48 hours of just the southern sun beating down there, it's possible that everything dries out and you kill off your germinating seeds or your newly germinated seeds. So you really want to water these regularly, and then once they germinate, again, regularly for a good 10-14 days until they're established. Based on your temperatures, you can change up the watering after that. But this would be my third round of cucumbers going in, and these will take off. They're going to grow up front here. They're not going to be shaded off by these cucumbers. And then when these all start dying off and can't be saved, I will just send the cucumber vines up these tomato cages and then back on to that concrete mesh back there, what they're growing on. And I'll have my third round of cucumbers. Let's go to one more place. Armenian cucumbers are going to go right in here. I'm going to clean out the space, remove these carrots that just flowered. They didn't really produce roots. And you can see how dry the soil is. I mean, there is just no moisture in there. So I want to loosen the area, and then I would do the same thing. This time I'm just going to do it in a row. 1, 2, let me get that out of the way, 3. I just drop the seeds right into there. Make sure I push them down half an inch or so, cover them over, water them in, and they're going to grow up this cattle panel. In this case, you could leave 1 plant, you could leave 2 plants. You don't really want 3 in a space. It's going to really take the nutrients out and the water out. So I don't recommend really more than 2 plants. Maybe down on that side where the weeds are, I would put another 1 or 2 plants, and that will cover over this cattle panel nicely. But again, this will be my third round. After all these are established, probably somewhere around the first, second week of August, I'm going to put in another round of cucumbers, and that will keep the harvest going. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. I sell the rosemary oil, peppermint oil, fabric pots there if you need those. And please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 750,000 YouTube subscribers. I will also do updates, and I will show you, how well these plants are doing. This is the first group that we worked on, and they look pretty good. They are worth saving. The guys over here, I probably would have just pulled, but for the sake of the video, we'll see how they do. Again, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Good luck in your garden. Hope you beat the heat, and I'll see you all next time.